Hello, everybody. Good evening. Hey, Sandy. Hey, Dolores. Hi, Kay. Hi, Bonnie. Hi, Sandy. Rick Maynard. How you doing? National Zoom call at the moment. Oh, yeah, I guess I got a notice on that. Sandy Degg says, hi, Kay. Rick Maynard says, sounds off. Sounds off? I think the sound should be all right. Is my sound okay, everybody? Stephanie says, hey, guys. Gonna go share. Remember, wait 5 seconds at least in between each share. Thank you for reminding us, Stephanie. It seems like when I just shared to a few groups, I didn't wait 5 seconds. Axel Bello has joined. Hi, Axel. Sandy Degg says, nice glasses, Joe. Do you think so? Thank you. Romano says, good evening from Miami. This is Carmen using someone else's phone account, having too much trouble with my device. I hope everyone is well and wish you all the continued benefits of good health. You guys catch the article about Mark but Cuban sounding a bit pro MMT these days? I haven't caught it yet, but I'm going to look into it. Sandy says, I hear you. Thank you, Sandy. Stephanie says, sounds good. And Axel says, Del Hour. I'm not sure what Del Hour. And Randy Hedgebeth has joined. Hey, Randy. Axel says, raise it up a bit. Take it you mean the sound. So yeah, I can raise it up a bit. No problem. Romano, otherwise known as Carmen, says to Sandy, hi dear. And Lana Dell is joined. And hi, Lana. Sandy says, hi, Stephanie. Hi, Carmen. Okay. Alana says, whole lot peeps. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. So let's get to it. I'm going to clear away a couple of really preliminary things first and then get to the Bernie news, of which there is a lot, of course, today. So I'm going to share my screen and get into something that Nancy Pelosi said, which should put you in the proper mood for the rest of this. Okay, this one appeared in Common Dreams, April 26th. It was from John Kelly, Common Dreams. And anyway, what he says, okay, is amid growing criticisms from progressives and increasing anxiety among the nation's working families, small business owners, local and state governments that economic relief from the coronavirus pandemic will come too little and too late. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Sunday told television viewers to, quote, just calm down, unquote, when asked if she had erred in her legislative strategy with the Trump White House and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Jake Tapper asked her this on State of the Union. He asked whether she had made a tactical mistake by allowing an interim piece of coronavirus relief package known as COVID 3.5 to pass last week without much stronger support for state and local governments. And Pelosi deflected on the premise, saying, just calm down. We will have state and local, and we will have it in a significant way. It's no use going on to what might have been. Yeah, just forget about the past, or just forget about all her mistakes, but just forget about that. So far, there haven't been any bailouts, or very few bailouts of people anyway from the CARES Act. The whole thing has been a farce. There have been bailouts for big businesses who don't need the bailouts. And so far, that's about it. Pelosi argued that the Democrats made, quote, the most of, unquote, the interim package, moving Mitch McConnell to a large expansion of the Paycheck Protection Program for small business, but promised once again that a larger package was on his way. Did something go wrong with Nancy Pelosi's wig in that, you think? The intervention came. We made the most of it, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says about the latest relief bill and why it doesn't include more for state and local governments. Judge it for what it does. Don't criticize it for what it doesn't. Sorry, Nancy, that's not why we voted for a Democratic House in 2018. We wanted that House to do something, and it hasn't done anything significant, so we criticize it for what it hasn't done, for what it doesn't do. We would praise it for what it does if it did anything significant, but thus far, it's not doing anything significant for the economy. The House is. And don't blame the Senate entirely. You're not putting McConnell in a bad place. You need to put him in a bad place. You need to pass a piece of legislation which is going to give all kinds of benefits to people, and then dare him not to pass that piece of legislation. That's what you need to do. You need to do something that's going to keep the House and turn the Senate. Kick the Republicans out of the Senate. Kick Moscow Mitch out. If you really want to see no more right-wing justices get in there, kick Moscow Mitch out. and get somebody in who will deny every single one of the right-wing Trump appointees. No more right-wing Trump appointees. Let the Dems in the Senate back up those appointees for the rest of Trump's whole term, if necessary. Anyway, Pelosi said local and state lawmakers, including New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, now there's a prize guy, a right to be frustrated in terms of lack of emergency funding for local governments. They should be impatient, Pelosi said, and their impatience will help us, I think she meant to say, get a bigger package and more funding in the Democrats' CARES 2 package now being drawn up in the House. On the interim package, widely criticized, is capitulation to McConnell and a forfeiture of key political leverage, Nancy Pelosi told the American people. Judge it for what it does. Don't criticize it for what it doesn't. I'm sorry. It doesn't do anything for us, so we're going to criticize it for what it doesn't. While McConnell was pilloried last week for suggesting that states should be sent to bankruptcy as opposed to receiving funds, Dems have said a large aid package to state and local governments will be a key part of their CARES 2 legislation. Well, we're waiting to see it. What's taking so long, Nancy? Is it taking so long because you're keeping everybody else home and running the House on a one-woman basis? As Common Dreams reported Friday in the wake of Trump signing the COVID 3.5 bill into law. Advocates for progressives said the Democrats' repeated kicking of the can down the road is no longer acceptable. Just wait until the next bill is not good enough anymore, Morris Pearl, chair of the Patriotic Millionaires, said in a statement. I covered some of this last time, it seems to me. I'll just read the final sentence and we'll go on from there. Quote, we need Democrats to be bold and fearless in fighting for our families and our communities, advancing solutions that are commensurate with the scale of the crisis we face, and helping us build toward a better future for our people, our economy, and our democracy, unquote, the progressive groups wrote in a letter to Pelosi and the minority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer. Little Chucky Schmucky, to use the expression of Howie Klein. Yes, little Chucky Schmucky indeed. So, one other thing I want to cover before I get to Bernie. Let me find it here. Yes. And let me share it here. A piece of good news. Not so much for us, though. But good news for New Zealand. Headline is coronavirus has been effectively eliminated in New Zealand following comprehensive approach of Jacinda Ardern's government. An invidious contrast to the United States. And there is Jacinda Ardern on April 27th, 2020, briefing the media about the coronavirus at the Parliament House in Wellington, New Zealand. Just 5 weeks, I added the just myself, after launching an aggressive nationwide lockdown to combat the pandemic, coupled with one of the most robust economic relief packages of any country, New Zealand's government on Monday announced that the new coronavirus is currently eliminated in the nation. The country's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, said Monday that while cases are not at zero, new cases have been in the single digits for the last several days. And, quote, incredible, unquote, statistics, said Ardern, as other countries face thousands of new cases per day. We have done what very few countries have been able to do, Ardern said last week, as the country was preparing to move from level 4 restrictions to level 3, allowing some businesses to reopen. Quote, we have stopped the wave of devastation, unquote. One new case was reported Monday, as well as 4 probable cases and one new death. Quote, we've achieved our goal of elimination. That never meant zero, but it does mean we know where cases are coming from. Director General of Health, Ashley Bloomfield, said. As the country reduces restrictions to level 3, businesses that reopen will be required to maintain physical distancing rules. Schools will reopen with limited capacity, and workers will still be encouraged to work from home if they're able to. Events such as weddings and funerals will only be able to take place with up to 10 people in attendance, but at least there'll be that. And public funding such as libraries and also museums and gyms will remain shuttered for the time being. New Zealand has confirmed a total of 1,469 cases of COVID-19 since the first case there was detected on February 28th. In New Zealand, home to 4.8 million, the disease has infected about 30 in every 100,000 people and has killed 19 people, fewer than 1 in every 100,000. The numbers in the island nation contrast sharply with those in the United States, where nearly 1 million people have been sickened, nearly 300 in every 100,000, and more than 50,000 people have died. Ardern has been credited with enforcing a strict lockdown even before the disease had claimed any lives in New Zealand. 2 weeks after the first case was reported, the Prime Minister ordered anyone entering the country to self-quarantine for 14 days. Most businesses shut down on March 23rd when there were 102 cases and no deaths. In other words, a little more than a month ago. And the country began enforcing level 4 restrictions, forbidding people to leave home except for outdoor exercise nearby on March the 25th. Ardern's extreme measures were in line with the recommendation of top public health officials, including U.S. National Institutes of Health Director Francis Collins, who said last month that the measures that would be most effective at slowing the outbreak would likely be seen as, quote, too drastic, unquote, by many. New Zealand has been testing the public at one of the highest rates in the world, Ardern said on Monday, by administering nearly 124,000 tests in recent weeks, with the capacity to complete 8,000 tests per day. The U.S. has increased its testing capacity in the past month, but public health experts say the severe lag in confronting the pandemic in the U.S. after the first case was reported there in January has made the disease very difficult to contain. On social media, observers noted the stark contrast between the two countries' approaches, with government watchdog Public Citizen saying the U.S. response has been marked by the, quote, unending incompetence, unquote, of the Trump administration. First coronavirus case in New Zealand, February 28th. First coronavirus case in the U.S., January 20th. New Zealand response was immediate lockdown. U.S. response, unending incompetence. New Zealand coronavirus deaths, 19. And U.S. coronavirus deaths, 55,000 plus. It's now at 58,000, by the way, or 57,000. But we'll see tomorrow where it's at. And tomorrow morning, John Campbell will report it for sure. Coronavirus was eliminated in New Zealand due to quick and decisive action by the Jacinda Ardern government. There was a tweet from Sarah Nelson, Flying with Sarah. Molly Jung Fast tweets, meanwhile, with almost more deaths here than American casualties from the Vietnam War. Yes, we're approaching 58,000 deaths here than American casualties in the Vietnam War, which were 58,000. That was over, I believe, over 9 years or something. And we're experiencing the 58,000 deaths in just a few months. New Zealand paired its orders for the country to stay at home for 5 weeks with a major relief package, which amounted to more than 4% of the country's GDP, a far more significant spending plan than other wealthy countries. It is, however, relevant here to mention that about 10% of the U.S. GDP would be $2.3 trillion. And so 4% would be something like $1.5 trillion for the U.S. That would be 4% of GDP here. Now then, we have already or are in the process of spending that much. In fact, our relief packages, by my count, if you include the $4.6 trillion trust fund that came out of the CARES Act and some other things, have probably amounted to between $4 and $6 trillion in our relief packages. Now that's getting close, certainly 15 to 16% of this country's GDP. And yet, there has been hardly any relief actually produced for people yet. Why is that so different from what's going on in New Zealand? Because the government there covered wages for all New Zealanders who had to self-isolate but couldn't work from home or were caring for sick family members. Businesses were also offered subsidies to continue paying employees, and the government doubled its healthcare spending. Public health agencies were given resources for contact tracing, to determine who ill people could have potentially spread the disease to, which hospitals received support to increase intensive care units. This package is one of the largest in the world on a per capita basis, said New Zealand's finance minister as the package was announced. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has largely left it up to states, to determine how to approach the kinds of lockdowns we've had, and several states have begun reopening their economies, even though the testing rate here is lower than New Zealand's testing rate. Thousands of new cases are being reported per day. But even more importantly, we're spending far more of our GDP on a percentage basis than is New Zealand. And so far, most of our people are not getting any relief. The money we've appropriated for this purpose has, well, by far the lion's share has been going to large corporations. Even a lot of the small business aid has been going to large corporations masquerading as small corporations. And Donald Trump has been talking about having another tax cut for the rich at this point. So it's not simply how much you spend, it's what you spend it on and how you target the spending. New Zealand spent on a major relief package. If the United States had spent on a major relief package, people would have been taken care of for far less money than we have already spent. So that's basically the story. We spent in the wrong way. The New Zealand story is far different. They have spent in the right way. They have protected their economy and their people from the economic impact, of the virus thus far. And they've also practically eliminated the virus from their country at the cost of very, very few deaths. That's the New Zealand story. Too bad we couldn't have had something similar here in the United States. If our political parties were different, if our president was different, if he was the kind of person who was running for the Democrats in 2016, but who the primary was stolen from in 2016, and who ran again in 2020, and who was also the victim of rigging in 2020, then maybe we could have had the kind of response to the coronavirus that New Zealand had. Why not? Why not? It's perfectly possible. So let's go on to the major burning news of the day. Right? Let me line up the articles here. Guess what? There's a little surprise, though, here. That surprise is, I don't know if it's that much of a surprise, but I guess Bernie has decided that he's going to draw the line somewhere. And he decided to draw the line here. So the line has been drawn. Let us consider it. I'll share the first article. There were 3 articles in Common Dreams on this. This appeared on April 27th, today, by Jake Johnson. Bad for democracy. The New York Board of Elections removes Bernie Sanders from the primary ballot. It was a move that was denounced by Sanders' campaign co-chair Nina Turner as, quote, bad for the Democratic Party, unquote, and bad for democracy. It was reported in the Huffington Post that the board's two Democrats, co-chair Douglas Kellner and Commissioner Andrew Spano, voted unanimously to remove Sanders. The state's June 23rd presidential primary is now canceled. So they voted unanimously to remove Sanders, and they canceled the primary without having the election on June 23rd, okay, or any other day. Their decision is bad, quote unquote, Turner, a former Ohio State senator, told HuffPost, unquote. It has a chilling effect on democracy as we know it because the ability of the people to weigh in was stripped from them before they had an opportunity to cast a ballot, unquote. Kellner and Spano said their decision to remove Sanders and cancel the New York presidential primary was motivated by concern for public health amid the coronavirus pandemic. But Stephen Wolfe of Daily Kos Elections argued that justification, quote, makes no sense, unquote. Why does it make no sense? Simply because, quote, New York's down-ballot primaries are still taking place the same day. And New York recently moved to waive the excuse requirement to vote absentee and mail absentee ballot applications to every registered voter, unquote. Wolfe tweeted, this will dampen down-ballot turnout, unquote. Of course it will. One can't, quote again, one can't help but see this as the New York Board of Elections trying to protect the machine Dems from insurgent primary challenges, unquote, said Wolfe. So that's it. How is this done? Well, Democrat commissioners on the Board of Elections just agreed that Sanders has stopped campaigning. So they're striking him from the ballot because they want to minimize folks voting in the pandemic. The board's decision just came hours after the legal team. Hang on a second, I'll put the camera back up again. I know it's been off for a few minutes. I've been going on because I figured you could hear the sound, but I think I want to do something about that now. So, hang out for a minute. There we go. I am back. So the board's decision came just hours after the legal team representing the Sanders campaign warned the New York officials that removing the Vermont senator from the ballot would sow needless strife and distrust, impeding Senator Sanders' efforts to unify the Democratic Party in advance of the November elections. Quote, Senator Sanders wishes to remain on the ballot and is concerned that his removal would undermine efforts to unify the Democratic Party in advance of the general election. Sanders' attorney Michael Seymour in a letter said in a letter to the board on Sunday. The board's move was made possible by a provision tucked in a budget measure signed by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo on April 13th, authorizing state election officials to remove from the ballot candidates who are seen to have ended their presidential campaigns. Now, I don't know what it means, who are seen to have ended their presidential campaigns. Who are seen. This is not about being seen. This is a matter of whether they've ended their presidential campaigns or not. Sanders suspended his presidential campaign on April 8th. And by the way, this measure was signed on April 13th. The law was passed on April 13th. Sanders suspended on April 8th. Clearly, the law should not apply to Bernie Sanders. because it postdates his suspending his campaign. By taking him off the ballot, they have violated the ex post facto law, or the ex post facto provision in the United States Constitution. Now, I don't know what the Constitution of New York State says, but there is very likely an ex post facto provision in it as well. And in any case, the extension of the 14th Amendment to the states, which the Supreme Court has validated on many, many occasions, would provide people with the same rights as they enjoy under the federal Constitution with respect to state law as well. So states, I believe, would be just as much prohibited from passing ex post facto laws as the federal government is. But we'll certainly see about this when this goes further in court. Sanders suspended his presidential campaign in April, said he wished to remain on the ballot in upcoming primary contests to continue accumulating delegates in an effort to exert influence over the party platform. While Vice President Biden will be the nominee, Bernie said at the time, we should still work to assemble as many delegates as possible at the Democratic Convention, where we will be able to exert significant influence over the party platform and other functions, unquote. Yes, Bernie suspended because the law at the time said that he could suspend, but he didn't have to end, and he could still accumulate those delegates. So New York is now saying, no, you can't because of a law we're passing after you suspended your campaign. Not only is this unfair, not only is it an illegitimate thing to do, not only is it rigging of the primary, but I believe it's a violation of the Constitution of the United States, and it's the kind of heavy-handed activity that Bernie has faced throughout this whole election from the establishment of the Democratic Party. Now, I know Andrew Cuomo is not a part of the DNC, but he is as much an establishment character as anyone in the Democratic Party is. And he is extremely heavy-handed in the way he attempts to rig elections. He's been very successful in doing this in New York State, and he's applying some of the same dirty methods here. But this time, he's going to be faced by the legal team, of Bernie Sanders. And the next article is about the response of the legal team. And I'll now share that with you. And that article was by Jake Johnson. Sanders' legal team protests possible, quote, involuntary erasure, unquote, of the senator from New York primary ballot. The legal team representing Bernie Sanders expressed opposition on Sunday to the New York state election officials' possible decision, which, by the way, they have made today, to remove the Vermont senator from the state's presidential primary ballot, a ploy that has angered progressives eager to help Sanders accumulate as many delegates as possible ahead of the national convention. It goes through some of the ground I've already covered. Michael Seymour said Senator Sanders has not officially terminated his candidacy with the Federal Election Commission and has explicitly voiced his desire to remain on the ballot in upcoming primaries, gather delegates, and attend a Democratic National Convention with an eye to influencing the party's platform. His involuntary erasure from the ballot on grounds of a law that was not in effect when he announced his campaign's limited suspension, would sow needless strife and distrust, impeding Senator Sanders' efforts to unify the party. By Sunday, Commissioner Andrew Spano, also a Democrat, expressed ambivalence concerning his decision, weighing the inconvenience to county governments against the desire of Sanders supporters for a voice at the convention. Unquote. To remove Sanders from the presidential primary ballot, both officials of the Board of Elections must agree to do so. On Monday, they did. And the lawyers wrote a letter, and their full letter points out that we understand the campaign will not have an opportunity to present at tomorrow's meeting of commissioners or to determine whether Senator Sanders is going to remain on the ballot for the June 23rd, 2020 presidential primary. In lieu of our live participation, we respectfully submit this letter for your consideration and to document the Senator's position on the official record. Senator Sanders wishes to remain on the ballot and is concerned that his removal from the ballot would undermine efforts to unify the Democratic Party in advance of the general election. What if Bernie announced tomorrow that he was unsuspending his campaign? Would he then go back on the ballot? Senator Sanders has duly qualified for placement on the primary ballot as a candidate for the nomination to the office of President of the United States. To get him on the ballot, the campaign mobilized a vast network of volunteer circulators across New York's 27 congressional districts, gathering nearly 60,000 signatures for Senator Sanders and his 185 authorized pledged delegates. Before and after the petitioning process, the campaign worked tirelessly in New York to conduct voter outreach and organizing initiatives. On April 8, 2020, Sanders announced the limited suspension of his presidential campaign. And of course, he emphasized he wanted to continue gathering delegates for the convention. Unlike most of the other candidates who have conceded in this year's primary, Senator Sanders has not officially terminated his candidacy with the Federal Election Commission, which, by the way, is what constitutes legal termination of one's candidacy for the president. Okay, the letter points out that Vice President Biden welcomed Senator Sanders' announcement, that is, the endorsement by Senator Sanders of Joe Biden, and his plan to continue collecting delegates for purposes of the convention. In statements to the press, one Biden campaign official confirmed, "We feel strongly that it's in the best interest of the party to ensure the Sanders campaign receives statewide delegates to reflect the work they have done to contribute to the movement that will beat Donald Trump this fall." It was also on April 13th that Governor Cuomo signed into law Senate Bill 7506B, an omnibus appropriations bill that added the following provision to the New York election law. Notwithstanding any inconsistent provision of law to the contrary, prior to 45 days before the actual date of a presidential primary election, if a candidate for office of the President of the United States who is otherwise eligible to appear on the presidential primary ballot to provide for the election of valid delegates to a national party convention or a national party conference, and any presidential election year publicly announces they are no longer seeking the nomination for the office of the President, or if the candidate publicly announces they are terminating or suspending their campaign. Now, Suspending the campaign doesn't mean to end the campaign. So this is arbitrary on the part of the state of New York. Suspending one's campaign had no legal status before this. Suddenly, New York gives suspending a legal status, basically saying that suspending, from the standpoint of New York's primary, suspending one's campaign is equal to terminating one's campaign. Well, it's unfortunate that Bernie Sanders did not know this on April 8th. Perhaps if the law had been passed prior to April 8th, he wouldn't have ended his campaign, or he wouldn't have suspended his campaign, or terminated his campaign, and he would still be in as an active candidate. Or if the candidate sends a letter to the State Board of Elections indicating they no longer wish to appear on the ballot, the State Board of Elections may determine by such date that the candidate is no longer eligible and omits said candidate from the ballot. Provided, however, that for any candidate of a major party, such determination shall be solely made by the commissioners of the State Board of Elections who have been appointed on the recommendation of such political party or the legislative leaders of such political party, and no other commissioner of the State Board of Elections shall participate in such determination. So wasn't it convenient that Andrew Cuomo passed an ex post facto law? The letter goes on. First, the law authorizes the commissioners to remove a presidential candidate from the primary ballot only if she or he is otherwise eligible to appear on that ballot. To the extent the board is contemplating Senator Sanders' removal from the primary under this condition, it is acknowledging that he has satisfied all of the requirements and is otherwise eligible to appear on the ballot. Second, the law is written in the present tense. It applies if the candidate publicly announces, and not if the candidate has publicly announced. This is significant because conduct regulating statutes such as this one are presumed not to apply retroactively unless the legislature clearly signals they should reach past conduct. Application of a new statute to conduct that has already occurred may, but does not necessarily have a retroactive effect, upsetting reliance interests and triggering fundamental concerns about fairness. A statute has a retroactive effect if it would impair rights a party possessed when he acted, increase a party's liability for past conduct, or impose new duties with respect to transactions already completed, thus impacting substantive rights. In light of these concerns, it takes a clear expression of the legislative purpose to justify a retroactive application of a statute, which assures that the legislative body itself has affirmatively considered the potential unfairness of retroactive application and determined that it is an acceptable price to pay for the countervailing benefits. The expression of intent must be sufficient to show that the legislature contemplated the retroactive impact on substantive rights and intended that extraordinary result. Even within the same legislation, language may be sufficiently clear to effectuate application of some amendments to cases arising from past conduct, but not others with more severe type of retroactive effect. And then there's citation of some cases. The retroactive application of paragraph 2-122-A13 would severely impact Senator Sanders' core substantive rights. Invoking this provision against him would subject him to the prospect of involuntary ballot removal, notwithstanding his publicly stated desire to remain a candidate and his satisfaction of all of the legal prerequisites for ballot access. Because of the severity of this potential deprivation, the presumption against retroactive application must operate with maximum force. Section 2-122-A13 was not on the books when Senator Sanders announced the partial suspension of his campaign. He had no opportunity to conform his conduct by exploring alternatives to formal suspension. to avoid adverse application of this new provision. The presumption against a retroactive application dictates that if the legislature truly intends to deprive a candidate of his rights by surprise and without prior notice, it must clearly say so. Because the statute here does not clearly state that it applies to announcement made before the law's passage, the presumption is not overcome. The law should not be interpreted to apply to announcements made prior to April 13th. Third, the statute confers discretion on the board to determine, so this is an appeal to the board at this point, not to declare, not to make a decision to remove Bernie from the ballot. I'm not going to read the rest of this because the board has gone ahead, and in spite of this letter, it has decided to decide against keeping Bernie Sanders on the ballot. And so here we go. There was a third article on this today, which states the case, I think, very, very well. And that article was written by Owen Higgins, also a staff writer of Common Dreams. Quote, "Democracy is dead," unquote, declare Sanders supporters after Bernie's taken off the New York State ballot. Supporters of Bernie Sanders were enraged on Monday after New York's Board of Elections voted to remove the Vermont lawmaker's name from the state's presidential primary ballot in the election scheduled for June. The move described by campaign advisor Jeff Weaver as, quote, "a blow to American democracy that the DNC should reverse." Does the DNC have the power to reverse it? Quote, "No one asked," I'm asking that question, quote, "no one asked New York to cancel the election," unquote. Weaver said in a statement, the DNC did not request it, the Biden campaign did not request it, and our campaign communicated that we wanted to remain on the ballot. Our campaign statement on the New York State Board of Election decisions to cancel the presidential primary in the state. The campaign statement is quoted. Okay, we know what it said. It just said essentially what the lawyers said and what Jeff Weaver said, so I'm not going to read it. Weaver added that the move was part of a pattern on the part of New York to strip voting rights from its citizens and should be treated as such. But New York has clearly violated its approved delegate selection plan, said Weaver. If this is not remedied, New York should lose all its delegates to the 2020 Democratic National Convention, and there should be a broader review by the Democratic Party of New York's checkered pattern of voter disenfranchisement. As Common Dreams reported, the Monday's decision to remove Sanders from the ballot was framed by Board Chair Douglas Kellner and Commissioner Andrew Spano, the two Democratic officials on the board in charge of making the call as a public health concern. Quote, "What the Sanders supporters want is essentially a beauty contest that, given the situation with the public health emergency that exists now, seems to be unnecessary and indeed frivolous. It's now April 27th. It is nearly 2 months until the scheduled primary on June 23rd. We don't know whether a public health emergency is going to exist on June 23rd. It very well may. It may be necessary to postpone the primary further beyond June 23rd for that reason. But this is only April 27th. It is not necessary now to make a decision, and certainly that decision should apply not only to the presidential primary, but to all the down-ballot primaries taking place in New York State. Getting back to the article. So progressives were quick to point out that the move is guaranteed to harm the prospects of insurgent Democratic candidates challenging established, more conservative incumbents. Quote, strong suspicion that the cancellation of Dem primary, while has the side effect of harming this bid to get Bernie delegates to the convention, is really about protecting threatened Dem incumbents challenged from the left by giving voters less reason to turn out, tweeted journalist David Badayan, Lindsey Boylan, who is running to replace Jerry Nadler in New York's 10th district, said the concerns over the disease appeared to her to be incredibly selective. None of this makes sense, she tweeted. I don't get it. Virus concerns for people who would vote for Biden and Bernie, but not virus concerns for everyone else who will be voting that day. None of this makes sense. If the primary is canceled for one candidate or for one contest, it should be canceled for all contests. If it's postponed for one contest, it should be postponed for all contests. Supporters of Sanders in New York, with the opportunity of voting for Sanders and adding to his delegate count influence over the party platform taken away, were incensed. Jewish Currents editor David Cleon said this decision was part of a pattern of behavior from the party's establishment towards its left flank. Letting Bernie supporters mail in our ballots would be a cost-free way to make some of us feel the tiniest bit more at peace with the way things have worked out, Klein tweeted. So, of course, Democrats have engineered a colossal wave of ill will toward the party and its nominee. And Brooklyn-based activist Linda Sarsour was enraged. I am livid, said Sarsour. Democracy is dead, but my spirits won't be. The New York Board of Elections is disenfranchising millions of voters by canceling the June 23rd primary. We deserve the right to cast our votes, she said. The bad will generated by this move, said Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a prominent surrogate for Sanders, during his now suspended run for the White House, will ultimately backfire. Ocasio-Cortez tweeted that the Democratic Party leadership need to understand that in order to reach the progressive wing of the party, that unity, quote, isn't a feeling, it's a process, unquote. And quote again, undemocratic and unilateral decisions that disenfranchise millions of voters and volunteers is extremely destructive to the process of unifying the party for November. Dems must take this seriously. This is the wrong call. Of course it is. It's absolutely the wrong call. But by the way, there are other things going on at this time when we're having the wrong call. Specifically, there's more and more news about Tara Reid, more and more corroboration for her claims. There are more women. Are more women stepping forward, making Me Too claims. Biden's status within the Democratic Party, among the party base, is falling by the day as a result of this, and among the progressive base as well. Trending over the weekend, and Twitter, and beginning to trend again, is the hashtag. Hashtag Biden drop out. Hashtag Biden dropped out. At one point over the weekend, Okay, I noticed that it had reached 110K tweets. It was given more steam today by the further revelations about the Tara Reade affair. There are also other things going on. There's a new group that's been formed on Facebook, the Biden Record Group. And the purpose of this group is just to make the Biden record explicit, all of it, through his long career, to make the Democratic Party and its voters face the reality of the Biden record before it is too late, to make them face the reality of the Biden record before Donald Trump thoroughly soaks Joe Biden in his record and runs away from him at the polls in the fall. Of course, we know there's a chance that will not happen, and we know that will happen because Donald Trump's own performance is so terrible. But at the same time, if Joe Biden can possibly lose this election, if anybody can possibly lose this election, then Joe Biden will do that, because apart from his current incompetence and incoherence and apparent cognitive decline, sorry, I was about to say when I was stopped in mid-sentence by my camera and mic going south again. Okay, if anybody can lose this election, okay, to Donald Trump, in the face of Donald Trump's absolutely terrible performance and the collapse of the economy here in the U.S., it is Joe Biden. And that is because of Biden's record. It's because of his record. Okay, but now in ending my program tonight, I want to call attention to something that was done by my daughter Devorah today, which may be of great interest to you. This is another piece of Biden News. So Devorah tweeted today, let me share this. She shared a modest proposal, which she tweeted at Bree Joy, specifically, actually Brianna Joy Gray, the former National Press Secretary for Bernie Sanders 2020, former contributing editor at Current Affairs, and former senior politics editor at the Intercept, and my daughter's hashtag to Bree Joy was, I propose a hashtag National Day of Bernie. After the primary is truly over, let's get every possible at Bernie Sanders voter, no matter primary, to come out and demonstrate for him. Let's see how many people we really are in a risk-free situation for the Democrats, since they will have already nominated their candidate. So let's see how many we really are risk-free for America. Let's see if he, specifically Bernie, can actually win. So this was retweeted by a number of people, but not nearly enough to make it go viral. Now I suggest we give it some support and we give it some help. Now I have already done that with some tweets and replies. Okay, specifically, I retweeted and commented, I second the motion. It doesn't interfere with party choices between now and the conventions and doesn't have anything to do with Bernie's campaign, but would show how many people care enough to show up for him and the Not Me, Us movement. And I tweeted this at Nathan J. Robinson, the editor, of Current Affairs, who has written a great piece on Joe Biden's record and has a terrific live stream on that record, as well. And of course, hashtag National Day, of Bernie. And then there was a tweet by C.D. Brzezinski. I have no idea whether C.D. Brzezinski is related to Mika Brzezinski or to Zbigniew, the late one. But what he or she said in replying to Gotta Burn Now was, "This is an outrage. Shame on the Democrats. They're pushing us out the door." And of course the angry face. And at Crystal Ball, at Kyle Kalinske, at Orf, hashtag undemocracy, hashtag Dem exit. And I retweeted that and I said, a hashtag National Day of Bernie is now necessary to push back against the steps to silence us and ensure a totally unfair Democratic primary. Make hashtag National Day of Bernie go viral. See the proposal at Devora F. And then I redirected them to my daughter's Twitter site. So, I hope you like that effort and will give it some support. I am calling for you to support it. I'd really like to see that go viral. So thank you very much, and I hope you've been sharing this. And I hope that you remember I have a Patreon account at patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. I'll now consider your comments. And I'll begin with Robin Menikoff's. She says, "Not us, our politicians." I suspect that she's a C, but of course, if one's name is Robin, it's not completely clear. And but Gina Marie says, "They're scared." Steve Gonzo says, "Well, not dollars anyway, just brain cells." Evelina says, "Is Biden campaigning?" No, right. He's not. I don't see Biden campaigning. Good point, Evelina. And Gina says, I was Jay. Kay says, I saw what AOC is trying to raise hell about that, but not hearing that they have replied in any way to her yet. I don't think that AOC has a lot of influence with Andrew Cuomo, uh, because Cuomo is trying to crunch all the progressives in New York State everywhere. Gina Marie says, I was threatened by FM. Who's FM? Robin says, they're all full of shit. Pardon my language. This is personal for me. Don't worry about your language here. I mean, I can't say what Facebook is going to do, but we welcome all language here. Okay, and Evelina Pont says, shame on New York State officials. Shame on New York State. Shame on Andrew Cuomo. But Avril Mano says, the DNC has already installed him. He doesn't have to. No, the DNC hasn't already installed him. They haven't installed him, Avril. Carmen, I should say. They have not installed him. There hasn't been a convention yet. Sandy Zedek says, by New York's Board of Elections, 518-474-6620, extension 5, then extension 1. Thank you, Sandy. I was threatened by Facebook jail. I meant to say due to political. I see. Oh, you mean due to your political views? Robin was laughing at what he was saying. Political theater indeed, says Lana. Robin says, threatened. Usually they just toss you in. You got a warning. Sandy says, DNC, 202-863-8000. Sandy's our official source for phone numbers. You got the numbers. Make the calls. Kay says, Gina, I saw a lot of people were threatened by FB for posting too many Bernie-related posts today, so you are not alone. And Robin says, oh, really? Evelina says, good thing Bernie is contesting this maneuver. It is a good thing. It's about time he started contesting something. Avril says, suppression. And Steve said, I think Bernie should unsuspend his campaign right now in response to what New York State has just done. He should unsuspend it and say he's continuing his campaign. And he's going to the convention and he's contesting the nomination. FB just said I've posted to the maximum number of groups. And Steve says I posted to 2. Kay says, yep, I must have seen about a dozen posts about that today. Robin says, can anyone send me a screenshot of FB threatening to FB jail for Bernie posts? Sandy says, Bernie, 802-862-1505. Robin says Cuomo was key in this. Of course he was key. He had that provision placed into a budget bill 5 days after Bernie suspended his campaign. Lana says, good. Sick of Cuomo on this. Evelina says, bad on you, Cuomo. Bad Cuomo. Bad Cuomo. Cuomo is now unacceptable as a presidential nominee. Kay says, I belong to several Bernie groups, so I see those. Avril says, I'm so glad Bernie and his legal team are standing up to this tyranny. Well, I hope they stand up all the way to the United States Supreme Court if necessary. And Gina Marie says, every time I start to like Cuomo, Cuomo, Beverly McNair Manga says, Sandy Day, warming up my dialing finger. A piece of my mind has the DNC's name on it. Just call them a bunch of shits and hang up. And Kay says Cuomo might be auditioning for Biden's VP. Screw that. He's unacceptable. If he gets to be Biden's VP after this, we're all Dem exit right then and there. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Stephanie says it's weird. Didn't say I'm in FB jail, but I still can't share this show. You can't share this show. They must not have liked the title. Establishment Dems just can't stop rigging. Every time I start to like Cuomo for a minute, he breaks my heart again. You can't like him. He's a gangster. Jesus. Steve says, if Jesse Ventura runs, I'm in. I shouldn't have said that. Okay, Cuomo is not a gangster, okay, as far as I know. He just acts like one. People during Bernie's live stream today want him to unsuspend. Yes, they want him to unsuspend. Robin says, I'm intrigued by the Ventura idea. Look, it's not so intriguing, really. It's just that if Jesse ran for the Greens, he'd be a preferable candidate to either Biden or Trump. So, I mean, it's not intriguing. It's obvious on its face that he'd be a better candidate than either Biden or Trump. Why? Because it's obvious that Jesse cares about people. He's cared about people all through his campaign. I mean, that's just the kind of guy he is. He would not sell out people. We might not like, a lot of his policies because, his ideology sometimes doesn't fit the conditions we have now. But I mean, better than either Biden or Trump. I mean, it would be no contest, if Jesse ran. What kind of dirt could they produce on Jesse? God. I saw that too, Sandy. Wish he would. Steve says Bernie is over. I briefly read that Chris Cuomo was faking his corona illness for his brother's political sympathy spiel. Well, it's all gone now. If he was faking it, it's gone now. Gina Marie says, I don't think Bernie is over unless we make him over. I am not willing to do that yet. Robin says, possible. Also, by the way, remember, about 20 minutes after we're done here tonight, this video will be up, on YouTube. If you can't share it on Facebook, you can share it on YouTube. I would love to have 250 shares of a video on YouTube. That would be great. Along with the likes and subscribes. I have almost no one coming to my YouTube channel now. And Kay says, wouldn't surprise me, Avro. And Alex Goller says, fuck the DNC, fucking fascists. Well, yeah, I mean, there's rigging. Anything seems to be acceptable to them. They have no sense of honor. They have no honesty left. They have no integrity left. Everything is instrumental to whatever their goals happen to be at a particular moment. And the goals are directed by the donors. We're talking corrupt, utterly, completely, unobstructively corrupt, unambiguously. Steffi Udy says, I'm just catching up. What the fuck? They don't ever get tired of screwing Bernie over. That was the title of the article, basically. They don't ever get tired of screwing Bernie over. Avril says he's a libertarian. Evelina says, I'm sick to death of it. They cut off Bernie's testicles. He seems to enjoy it. Biden is a rapist. Okay, Evelina says, "Oh, that helps a lot, Steve. Gee, thanks." And Isaac Lieberman says, "Petition to Bernie in wake of Cuomo and DNC stealing New York. https assetschange.org. Photos." I don't know what these photos are about or what this what Isaac Lieberman is linking to here, but go see. Go see. You can always go see. Kay says, "I saw part of a Biden online thing, but his wife was the one speaking most of the time. Maybe she wants to be president. I got a secret. If he's elected, Jill will be president." Robin Menikoff says, "Why would they get sick of it? This is crucial to them, essential to their power." Lana says, "I have no interest in Jesse, but you have to agree Jesse would be better than either Biden or Trump, right?" Jesse Donnelly says, "Fuck Cuomo and Biden." Robin Menikoff says, Deborah Wilson says, "Thank you so much for being on this, Joe." Well, thank you so much for coming, Deborah. And Jesse Donnelly says, "Total bullshit." Steve says, "Nobody worked harder for Bernie than me." I'm sure that's true, Steve. I'm sure that's true. So let's do what my daughter says. Let's show Bernie that he was wrong. We are the Not Me, Us movement. Let's still be that movement. Bernie's left the movement temporarily. Let's show him that he was wrong to leave the movement. Evelina Pani says, mafioso behavior. It certainly is. Avromano says, "Is this going to Supreme Court?" I don't know. I don't know if they'll take the case. But Evelina says it should not that it would help. It should, not that would help with the judges in the court. Well, I don't know. I mean, the judges might want to create chaos in the Democratic Party, so they might decide for Bernie, right? That could always happen. Steve says, "Biden's wife does all the talking now. She really, really, really wants to be First Lady." Well, she would be a very powerful First Lady. By the way, she's probably considerably to the left of Joe Biden. Okay, Jesse Donnelly says to the New York Supreme Court. It might go to the New York Supreme Court. And Kay says, "Steve knows she wants to be president. She's not going to be nominated for the presidency. There's no way. Dr. Jill is not sufficiently prominent." And Steve Gonzo says, "Rolling goalposts. Bloomer, Tulsi, too." Oh, God. And Isaac says, "Completely illegitimate interpretation of Bernie's statement, since he clearly stated he would remain on the ballot to collect delegates. He would just, quote, suspend, unquote, his campaign. So he would not contribute, to promotion of COVID dangerous actions that Perez and Biden were homicidally promoting. Cuomo is attributing all those incorrect interpretations of the term suspend, ignoring the clear statements of intent." Yes, he is, and all this is being brought up and will be in the courts if Bernie goes to courts. Steve says, "Jesse would reopen 9/11. That's all I need." Yeah, Jesse might end our relationships with the Saudis. That would be wonderful. Evelina says, "Clear to me." Stephanie Smith-Udy says, "Well, I got probably 60 groups before getting stopped. Technically, I'm not in FB jail. I just can't share this particular one so far. This is why we need a group of volunteers we can depend on to share to the live stream. With more people, we can share in only 15 to 20 groups per person and not get put in jail. And I completely agree with that. We do need people to help Stephanie. We need to have a team. Please volunteer if you can spare some time. If we have more people, then as Stephanie says, it's only necessary for one person to share to 15 or 20 groups per person. And you won't get put in jail. You won't get put in jail. If you do it right and you wait 15 seconds before each share, and you're careful about it, and you're careful in selecting the groups, and Stephanie has a list of groups that it's safe to share to, besides, and she can share this information. And Steve says again, Michelle is a man. I'm sorry, not that there's anything wrong with it. That's Steve's running gag. Carmen says, Mark Cuban has had a change of heart in some aspects and is for a $15 an hour and a federal jobs guarantee. He is also still mulling over if he's going to run for president. Oh, great. Another billionaire throwing his hat in the ring. And Rick says, I'm in about 8 message groups with 5 to 50 in them. And the suckers in the Democratic Party, all a billionaire has to do is to throw their hat in the ring. And some suckers in the Democratic Party, perfectly well-meaning people, just love the idea. Just love the idea. Evelina says, I got suspended for sharing to 3 groups on and off. And Rick says, I can only do 10 group shares. Sandy says, it just shows that she doesn't care he's impaired. She wants to be First Lady. She is married to a woman sniffing pervert, and she wants her title for putting up with him all these years. Well, Steve says, yep. Carmen says, you really need to talk to a therapist about your latent In case of Sandy, the way he's fading so fast mentally, she would be president. My point exactly. Sandy says I share to my groups. I share to a few of my groups also, like 6, I guess. Isaac Lieberman said, true, all contests. Try VBM. Try mail. Steve says, Avril should do research. Anybody ever see a picture, of a pregnant Michelle Obama? I don't know if I can locate one now, but I think I have seen a picture of a pregnant Michelle Obama. Carmen says he's a libertarian. Who's a libertarian? Stephanie says, I'm begging. Can I get any volunteers to create the share team? And I'm begging too. Please help Stephanie. Once we get a group chat started, we can discuss how we're going to handle the sharing. Please send me a message to my inbox or on this post. If we aren't friends, please send. I think she's asking you to become friends and then join a chat on how to share. And we're determined to make it fun, to not put too much work on anyone, have people share the work, but really boom these live streams. Really make them explode, in an exciting way. Kay says New York should be in the streets to protest this now. Well, there's so much New York should be in the streets about. I mean, all New York State should have been in the streets about the bailouts, practicing social distancing. Of course. Carmen says, what would it matter? Evelina says, there's a lockdown. Kay says they can go in their cars. Evelina says they're taking advantage of it. Stephanie says, please send me a request or give me a name on this post. Folks, we really need volunteers for this. It would be so appreciated. Sandy says 6 feet apart, but protest. Steve says it won't, but we need transparency. But Evelina says they did that in Israel. But Avril says, libertarians are for no government, which would mean no beautiful fiat funding from we the people anymore. They're idiots. Sandy Degg says it could be done. Deborah says, I want this group to succeed in bringing forth Biden's record. So do I. Evelina says this is very much worse than 2016. It is very much worse than 2016 because it was carefully rigged from the start. In 2016, they just sort of improvised as they went along. But now, in this campaign, they had a full freaking playbook. Bill O'Dell says 2 words, Tara Reid. Evelina says it's blatant and in our faces. Yes, it's insulting. Another 2 people came forth to back Tara. I know. And Gaetano Mortellaro says, Soup Joseph? And Evelina says, humiliating. Bill O'Dell says, Joe Skates, while Kavanaugh was butchered by hateful, hypocrite Democrats. Well, we're not hypocrite Democrats here. I don't even think we are Democrats here, but we're certainly not hypocritical. Couldn't stand Kavanaugh, and we can't stand Biden for it either. Rick Maynard says, hashtag Dem exit, hashtag rent strike, hashtag mortgage strike, hashtag People's Party, hashtag by general strike, hashtag general strike 2020, hashtag not them, us, hashtag not me, us. Deborah Wilson says, I like your girl's idea. I'm sorry, girl's idea? Kay says, yes, and very maddening, Evelina. They will lose a lot over this. Rick says, night all, eyes closing. Evelina says, haha, it's a scream. Steve says, yeah, libertarians are an idiot. But we need them. Carmen says, you might as well be a slug voting for salt, SMDH. I believe Tara. And Steve Gonzo says, hashtag after Burning Man. And Steve says, so Avril, who do you support? Kay says, love it, Joe. Sandy Degg, I don't have a lot of friends on Twitter. Can we put it on Facebook? Yeah, we're going to put it on Facebook too, or Devora's going to put it on Facebook. I think she's going to start a Facebook group as soon as she has a chance. And Carmen Muniz says, whoever has Bernie's platform. And Jan Zimmerman said, Dems are so stupid. They bumped Bernie just like last time, and he would make a better president than Trump or Biden. Truth. Right? It is. But the thing is, okay, the Democrats are not for a better president. What they are for is a president who will follow the orders of the donors. That's what they are about. Now, a lot of the donors don't like the Donald. They really don't. Can anyone please amplify the reference to ex post facto in this instance? Thanks in advance. When Bernie suspended his campaign, he did so, he decided to suspend as opposed to end or stay in. In other words, those were his options. He could terminate, he could suspend, okay, or he could stay in. one of the reasons why he's suspended is because he could still be a part of the campaign and still collect some delegates while being suspended, because on April 8th, that was the law. On April 13th, Cuomo signed a new law into existence in New York State. And that new law said, in part, that people who suspend their campaigns could be taken off the ballot by the Board of Elections. So that new law should not apply to Bernie Sanders because he suspended before that new law came into existence. So that's why, in relation to Bernie and his decision to suspend, that law is an ex post facto law. And Steve Wolfbrand said, as who might that be? Kay says, but under Bernie, the rich would have to pay their fair share in taxes. They hate it when they have to part with money and power. And Chris Pharisee said, Steve Wolfbrand, I'm from Minnesota originally. I definitely vote for hashtag Jesse Ventura. Hashtag Jesse is on fire. Okay, and Evelina says, hashtag unsuspend Bernie. Steve Gonzo says, haha, sorry, Steve. I just realized I've been replying to you. Oops. And Isaac says, yes, unsuspend. Petition to Bernie in wake of Cuomo and DNC stealing New York to unsuspend. And Louise Vogel, I think, but Deborah has a great idea. It's Devorah, not Deborah. But Deborah is the English translation of Devorah. And Louis says, I am with her. Bernie should reinstate his campaign. And Steve says, while I'm here, what was the hashtag that Jay Fire mentioned? The hashtag that I mentioned, are you talking about Devorah's hashtag? The hashtag is hashtag National Day of Bernie. Hashtag National Day of Bernie. That hashtag. The other hashtag I was mentioning was the one that was trending over the weekend. That was the Biden hashtag, and it was the hashtag dropout Biden. Hashtag dropout Biden. All one word. So where am I here? Okay. So there I am. Isaac Lieberman says, outrageous, illegitimate misinterpretation of Bernie's statement, since he clearly stated he would remain on the ballot to collect the delegates. Yes, I know. I think I read this before. Stephanie says, bam, I got all my 120 groups. Terrific, Stephanie. Thank you. Evelina says, congrats. And Kay says, I'm not into Cuomo at all, but the thing is, most Dems have no idea what he is really about. I know they don't. No, I know they don't. All they know is that he's been doing the COVID-19 stuff, and he's looking pretty good when he was doing it. I don't think he's looking as good as Inslee, okay, or Newsom, but of course, the media are in New York. You know, whatever's in New York is like super, super, super news, right? Kay says, not the ones I have on FB Friends. Evelina says, oh, you're too kind. I think Kay was responding to that. Stephanie says, I just switched from sharing your live stream, Joe, to Dolores' post, and boom! They must have picked up watching my live stream from the title. Kay says, I try to tell them, but they follow MSM News and they drank the Kool-Aid. Evelina says, I shared on FB. Has anyone noticed our numbers are up and have been steady throughout the show? I have noticed, Stephanie, that they are up. I'm sure quite a lot of it is due to the sharing, and a lot of the sharing is due to your efforts. But I think other people have also been active in sharing. So I thank everybody who has shared, and thank you, Stephanie, for your fantastic efforts. And Lana says, what is the name of your YouTube channel? You have to keep telling us. Oh, I have to keep telling you, huh? Okay. I'll keep telling you. Thank you for reminding me, Lana. The name of my YouTube channel is Joseph Firestone. 2 words. Joseph Firestone. So search for Joseph Firestone and you will get to my YouTube channel. Which has many, many, many YouTubes on it. Everything I've recently done on Facebook has gone up to YouTube. Thank you. I will remind you of my YouTube channel frequently. What's your YouTube name? Joseph Firestone. Deborah says, your voice is one of truth. I try to make it so. Evelina says, Dr. Joe, you're so cool. You tell it like it is. Thank you, Evelina. Isaac Lieberman says, it's a petition. Petitions are sometimes very good. This one is probably a very good one. And Steve G. and Jamal had an interview in which they talk about Bernie starting a revolution but only showing up to do a pillow fight. Steve Grumbine, Steve G. being Steve Grumbine, as opposed to Steve Gonzo. And Jamal or Jamal? Okay, are we talking Jamal Thomas here? Russ. And Russ says, they had an interview in which they talked about Bernie starting a revolution, but only showing up to do a pillow fight. I know, that was the problem. That's apt. That's apt. Evelina says, Bernie unsuspend. And this time, don't go to a gunfight with a pillow. Steve says, they locked me up if I so much as Bernie's side-eye. Wow. Lana says, I'm annoyed with Ilhan Omar. She posted to Twitter that it's time for a UBI. Maybe she meant a temporary emergency type, but she didn't specify that. Ugh. All the gangbangers came out of the woodwork. What she's probably doing, Lana, just ask her on Twitter whether she's supporting the Jayapal Tlaib bill specifically, because that has a basic income as a temporary COVID-19 emergency, and then a basic income for a year after that until the economy recovers. So, ask her to clarify that, Lana. She will. I think you're one of her constituents, aren't you? Stephanie says, please remember, we need help sharing. Please volunteer for our new share team. And I'm going to fourth that motion. If you're able to help with sharing, please message me or leave your name on this post. If we aren't friends, leave your name and I'll send you a friend request. We really need your help so we can share, reach more folks without getting put in FB jail. Please reach out to me, love. Sharing won't take long. The more people we have sharing, the less groups we have to share in. No FB jail. Right. And Stephanie says, good to see you, Jim, or good to see you, Jimmy. And Sandy says, I have 63 groups, laugh out loud. Stephanie says, thanks for joining us, Cora. It's good to see you. It's good to see you, Cora. It is. Steve says, talk about the new Facebook group, the Biden Record. Well, if you search for the Biden Record, you'll see the new Facebook group, the Biden Record, the graphics for which have been done by Amber Lee. I should give her full name. It's Amber Lee Aurora Grigo. I always wonder whether I pronounce her name correctly. I've got the Amber Lee in the Aurora part also, but I don't know whether I've pronounced her last name correctly. So if I don't have it entirely correct, Amber, I just have a very painful kidney infection. Oh, God, those are terrible. Kay says, drink cranberry juice, Stephanie. Yeah, do. Drink cranberry juice. Stephanie says, Evelina Joe is so cool. I love his show. And Carmen says, thank you, Stephanie. Carmen says, thanks for all the insight about this latest attack on Bernie and we the people. I have to give the phone back. I appreciate your hard work. Good night, beautiful people. Kay says, good night, Avril. Steve says they fucked around. It's time for hashtag Big Us to let them find out. That other hashtag, remember, is hashtag Drop Out of Biden. Stephanie says, why there's so many sexual predators in the government, and they are supported. But once again, I'll say it. The United States of America loves sexual assault so much we elected its mascot for president and about to try and elect another mascot for sexual assault. Disgusting how Americans can overlook that stuff. I'll tell you what's happening there. Okay? And what's happening there is that people get in power. And they're also working all day. And they're working many nights. But they have this enormous power with respect to their staffs and with respect to other people. And the power corrupts them. Now, okay, it does not corrupt everyone, but it corrupts a substantial number of people who have considerable power. And it's about the power, and in many cases it's about the money also. So, I mean, that's what's going on. It's probably about the power than it is, probably more about the power than it is the sex. Okay, Evelina gives the two hashtags there, and Russ says, I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you, Russell, for coming. Kay says, Cuomo has continuing cutting Medicaid and closing hospitals. I know. In the middle of the pandemic, he's passed a budget to continue cutting Medicaid and closing hospitals. I mean, the man is... Stephanie says, no, it's not me. I'm not trying to take the credit. Just seems like a lot of people sharing and watching. Great. Grand. That's great. That's what I'd love to see. Thank you, everybody. And Kay says, people don't want to know the truth. I watch Sam Seder Majority Report, and he lives there, so he knows. Yeah. Okay, Evelina says, they know, they know. Okay, and Lana says, I hope you feel better. Okay, I hope you feel better too, Stephanie. Get better quickly. Kay says, some do and some just buy the BS on the mainstream. And Kay says, power is addicting just like money. And both of them together are so terribly addicting. Evelina says, I saw a fake Ilhan by video. Careful. Lana says, yes, Omar is my rep. So tweeted her. She'll listen to you. She's your rep. Sandy says, no Joe. I have 163 groups. Wow. Stephanie says, how can the people support them? Look at what Trump has. President he can get away with, and regular people seem clueless. Not only that he can get away with it, he does get away with it. Look at what he's gotten away with in terms of violating the Constitution, up and down. Any sense of ethics, or decency. He's making money hand over fist off his presidency. He and his children and his family. This is a mafia presidency. And he's telling us to our faces that he's above the law. And he's got the Attorney General of the United States telling us he's above the law. I think we can't touch him now because the Republican Party is protecting him. But I think that when he gets out and he goes back to, well, he's probably not going to go back to New York State, but there should be a warrant out for his arrest in New York State after he leaves the presidency. And there should be an attempt to extradite him back to New York State to face charges. Because certainly Letitia James is going to put some charges to him. But we will see. Sandy Degg says too many. Okay, folks. I've been on for about 2 hours. Sandy says it seems like a lot of these politicians, are above the law. I believe that's true. I believe that's true. I mean, look at what happened to Mnuchin. Kamala Harris had recommendations to prosecute him from her team, from her staff. They all wanted to prosecute him. Kamala Harris said no. She got a $2,800 contribution from him. I'm not saying that's why she said no, but she probably said no. She knew she was going to run for the Senate. She knew she was going to run for the presidency at some point. She probably didn't want to antagonize a lion of Wall Street by putting him in jail. And look what we got because she did not put him in jail. We have a $4.6 trillion slush fund for the large corporations so they can absorb more and more of our economy throughout the coronavirus emergency and beyond. Kay says, thank you, Joe. Good to see all my friends here. I really look forward to these discussions with you all. And so do I. It's really nice to have a terrific group of people here and to see people so friendly to each other. It's really good. It's really, it's good for my soul. I'm sure it's good for your souls, too. Anyway, I'm going to say good night. Okay, I thank you for coming. Please don't forget my YouTube channel and my Patreon account And please come tomorrow when I'll be on again with another exciting edition of the In-Depth Show with Joe Firestone. Beverly McNair Mangus says, Stephanie Smith Udy, I'd like to help. Thank you, Beverly. And Sandy says, good night, everyone. Good night to you, Sandy. And good night to everyone.